What happens when a bride's joke about already being married stops being funny? How does a single sentence, said for attention and laughter, become the reason a husband walks away in silence and returns with papers instead of flowers? I always thought laughter could fix anything, that if you could make people laugh, they'd forgive you faster. I built my whole personality around that idea. Charming, funny, impossible to stay mad at. Owen used to call it my defense mechanism, but I preferred sense of humor. It sounded harmless, almost cute. Even at our wedding, I wanted the room to feel alive, not stiff or serious like those quiet ceremonies that make everyone hold their breath. I told myself jokes would make the day unforgettable. They did, but not the way I planned. When I said what I said, I didn't mean it. It was supposed to be funny. People were watching, phones were out, and I just wanted to look confident, spontaneous, the kind of bride who didn't take herself too seriously. I didn't realize a few careless words could ruin everything that came after. Now, when I think about that moment, I still hear the silence that followed, the laughter that started soft, then stopped too soon. Owen's face didn't change much, but I knew. He didn't find it funny at all. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning of the rehearsal, the apartment felt like a showroom. Everything was spotless because Owen had cleaned it himself the night before. That was the kind of man he was, organized, calm, predictable. I used to find it comforting. Now it just made me feel like a guest in my own home. He was in the kitchen, folding a checklist in half, saying something about timelines and deliveries. I half listened while scrolling through my phone. He asked if I'd checked in with the photographer. I said I'd handle it later. He said, "Later isn't good enough this week." I laughed, told him he'd make a great wedding planner. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me for a second before saying, "It's our wedding, Maren, not a project." That tone, steady, measured, always made me want to push back. So I said, "Then maybe stop treating it like one." He didn't argue. He rarely did anymore. That silence felt heavier than yelling. When he walked away, I muttered something about him being allergic to fun. He heard me, of course. He always heard everything. Later, I went to the bridal studio with Bree. She was the kind of friend who thought chaos was charming. The moment I told her Owen had been serious again, she rolled her eyes and said, "He's lucky to have you. You keep things interesting." We laughed together like teenagers. While the seamstress pinned my dress, I joked that Owen probably had a spreadsheet for how to smile during the ceremony. Everyone in the room laughed, except one woman near the back. Owen's mother, Darla. She was polite but sharp, the kind of person whose disapproval you could feel, even when she said nothing. She looked at me in the mirror and said softly, "It's good to keep humor in marriage, dear. Just make sure the joke doesn't come at his expense." I smiled and said she was overthinking it. Humor made things light. That's what I believed. Darla just nodded like she already knew how it would end. After the fitting, Bree and I grabbed coffee. She asked if I was nervous. I said no, I just didn't want it to be boring. I told her I wanted our wedding to feel alive, not like some quiet ceremony where everyone sits still. She said, "Then make it fun. People remember bold brides." That word, bold, stuck with me. It made everything sound exciting instead of reckless. I said I wanted to surprise Owen during the vows, maybe say something playful to make everyone laugh. Bree said, "You? You'll think of something perfect." When I got home, Owen was at his desk, typing. His laptop screen showed an Excel sheet labeled guest seating. I watched him from the doorway and said, "You really can't help yourself, can you?" He turned, half smiling. "Someone has to keep it together." I stepped closer. "You don't trust me to?" He looked up. "I trust you to charm people. I just don't trust the details to chance." That stung more than it should have. I asked, "So, I'm the entertainment now. He sighed quietly. No, Maren, you're the reason for all this. I just want it to run smoothly. I wanted to say thank you, but instead I said, you sound like my manager. He went back to typing. Maybe that's what it takes. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. I told myself it was just stress. Every couple argued before their wedding, right? But something about his silence didn't feel like stress. It felt like distance. When I got into bed, he was already asleep. His phone buzzed once, face down on the nightstand. I glanced at it. Calendar reminder, rehearsal, 5:30 p.m. Confirmed DJ, even his phone was disciplined. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee just to prove I could be responsible too. He came into the kitchen, surprised, and said it smelled nice. For a moment, we felt normal again. Then he mentioned needing to review the vows together, and the warmth vanished. I said, can't we just say what we feel in the moment? He said, we've had months to prepare. I laughed. You don't rehearse love, Owen. He looked at me then, calm but tired. You rehearse respect. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked my phone and saw a notification from Bree. Got a surprise for tonight. I smiled without thinking. Owen noticed and asked what it was. I said it was just Bree being Bree. He nodded, but his eyes lingered like he knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. When he left for work, he paused at the door and said, try not to turn tonight into a show. I rolled my eyes. You say that like I plan everything. He said, you plan attention better than anyone I know. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. I stared at the empty kitchen, annoyed at how calm he could be. I told myself he didn't get it, that he didn't understand how boring perfection could feel. I wanted our wedding to be memorable, something people would talk about. That night, Bree picked me up in her car, music blasting. She said the rooftop rehearsal party would be legendary. I laughed, feeling lighter already. As we drove, the city lights blurred through the window, and I told her, Owen's acting like this is a business meeting. Maybe I'll have to wake him up somehow. She grinned. Then do it. You've got the stage tomorrow. Make it fun. I smiled, thinking maybe I would. A clever joke, just enough to make him blush. Something to remind him I wasn't just the quiet bride who followed his schedule. When I got home later, he was asleep again, one hand still resting on his planner. I whispered, you'll laugh, I promise. He didn't hear me. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. Unknown number. Preview reads, still owe me a wedding, remember? The rooftop rehearsal party was supposed to feel like a dream. String lights, soft music, laughter echoing against the skyline. I told everyone I wanted a relaxed night, nothing formal. But really, I wanted to prove I could make a crowd love me. When Owen and I arrived, people cheered. He smiled politely, his arm around me. But I could tell he was already counting minutes until it was over. Bree ran up with 2 glasses of champagne and whispered, wait till you see who showed up. I frowned, but she just grinned and disappeared into the crowd. I brushed it off, too busy smiling for photos. Everyone wanted selfies with the bride. I posed, laughed, tossed my hair. I could feel Owen watching me, half proud, half uncomfortable. Then I saw him, Cole Merrin, standing near the bar like he belonged there. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. He looked exactly the same confident smirk, same careless charm. I froze for a second before forcing a laugh. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. Owen turned to see what I was looking at. His smile disappeared. Bree bounced back to us, proud of herself. Surprise! I thought it would be funny. Owen's jaw tightened. Funny how? Bree waved it off. They used to date. It's ancient history. She nudged me. Come on, Merrin, say hi. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I walked over to Cole, pretending I wasn't nervous. He raised his glass. Didn't expect to get another wedding invite from you. I laughed too loud. Guess you never know. People around us chuckled, waiting for the punchline. I felt the pressure to deliver, to keep the energy light. So I said, Technically, everyone, I might already be married to this one. There was a pause, half shock, half amusement, then laughter erupted, cameras flashed, Bree howled with delight, Owen stood still, expression blank. Cole leaned in, playing along, saying something about not signing the divorce papers yet. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls. I smiled through it, pretending it was all part of the act. But when I looked at Owen, he was staring at me like I'd just torn something invisible between us. After that, he barely spoke. He thanked the host, shook a few hands, and slipped away quietly. People noticed, whispering. I told them he was tired, that accountants don't handle crowds well. Bree thought it was hilarious, replaying the joke over and over. She said, "You killed it. That's going viral, I swear." Later, as the music faded, I saw Cole at the bar again. He raised his phone and said, "Smile for one last photo, Mrs. Merrin." I rolled my eyes, but before I could stop him, he snapped it. The flash caught me mid-laugh, my hand on his arm. I told him to delete it. He said, "Relax. Everyone knows you were joking." But I wasn't relaxed. My chest felt tight. I excused myself, pretending to take a call, and stepped onto the balcony for air. Down below, the city buzzed, cars, lights, voices, all moving without me. My phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. "Nice to see you still think about me." I didn't reply. Bree came out a few minutes later, wine in hand. "You okay?" "Fine," I said. "Just tired." She nudged me playfully. "You've got to admit that was perfect timing. Everyone loves a fearless bride." I forced a smile. "Yeah, fearless." When I got home, the apartment was dark. Owen had left the living room light on but wasn't there. His suit jacket was folded neatly on the chair, his cufflinks beside it. I went to the bedroom. Empty. His phone charger was gone. On the kitchen table sat a note. "Needed air. Don't wait up." I stared at the handwriting. Perfect, calm, measured. Just like him. I called Bree, pretending to sound casual. "He left early," she said. "He'll cool off. He's too steady to stay mad." But I wasn't sure. That steadiness didn't feel safe anymore. It felt final. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen notifications. Bree had posted clips from the party. Laughter, cheers, my voice saying, "Technically, I might already be married." The caption read, "Funniest bride ever." I felt sick. I called her immediately. "Take it down," she laughed. "Oh, come on, it's harmless." "Just do it," I snapped. "Too late," she said. "People already shared it." When Owen came home, I was pacing. He didn't even take off his jacket before saying, "I saw the video." I said, "It was a joke." He nodded slowly. "I know, everyone knows. That's the problem." I tried to touch his arm. "Don't be dramatic." He looked at me, calm as ever. "You told a room full of people you were married to someone else." I said, "It made people laugh." He replied, "It made me small." For the first time, his voice cracked a little. I didn't know what to do with that. I told him he was taking it too seriously, that no one actually believed it. He just walked past me into his office. I heard the door close. When I went to bed later, his side was still empty. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. I tried to convince myself it would blow over by morning. But when my phone buzzed again, the preview made my stomach drop. Tagged in 3 new posts. Bride admits she's already married. I turned off the screen and stared into the dark, trying to convince myself the world was still laughing with me. Printer spools faintly from behind his office door, then stops, followed by a single deliberate click of the lock. By the time the wedding day arrived, everything felt too bright. The venue shimmered with flowers and lights, and people smiled at me like I was something to admire, not to mock. I tried to smile back, to act like the night before had never happened. Owen didn't mention the video that morning. He just dressed in silence, adjusting his tie with mechanical precision. I said, "You're not still upset, are you?" He didn't look at me. "Let's just get through today." I told myself he'd forget once the music started, once he saw me walking down the aisle. People always forgave when you gave them a good show. At the ceremony, everything went as planned. The music swelled, guests clapped, cameras flashed. Owen waited at the altar, face unreadable. I told myself that meant focus, not anger. When I reached him, he took my hand, but his grip was cold. The officiant began the vows. I was supposed to repeat after him, to keep it formal, but the silence was too heavy. I thought if I said something funny, I could break the tension. I looked at Owen and said loudly, "Guess this makes it official, my second wedding." Laughter scattered through the crowd. Some gasped, some chuckled nervously. Bree clapped once before realizing Owen wasn't smiling. His jaw tightened, eyes steady on mine. The officiant hesitated, waiting for someone to fix it. I tried to laugh again. "I'm kidding," I said. "Relax, everyone." But no one did. Owen didn't speak for several seconds, then continued the vows as if nothing had happened. The rest of the ceremony was quiet, suffocating. Even the applause at the end sounded forced. At the reception, I pretended everything was fine. I danced with guests, made toasts, posed for photos. People whispered behind their glasses, their smiles polite but tight. Owen sat beside me, answering questions with one-word replies. When it came time for speeches, Bree took the microphone. She tried to save me, bless her heart. "To Marin and Owen," she said, "a couple who proves laughter keeps love alive." She looked at me, expecting me to join in. I raised my glass, but my hand trembled. Owen didn't raise his. After dinner, he disappeared. I found him later near the back hallway of the venue, talking quietly with the manager. When I approached, he straightened and said he was arranging our checkout. "Our wedding isn't even over," I said. He nodded. "Neither is the embarrassment." I laughed nervously. "You can't still be mad," he said softly. "You turned our vows into entertainment." I rolled my eyes. It was one line. He looked at me then, so calm it hurt. It was the line. I told him to stop making everything so dramatic that nobody cared except him. He said, "That's what scares me most. You don't care at all." Then he walked back toward the reception, leaving me in the hallway. When I returned to the main room, people were still laughing and drinking. Bree came up and whispered, "You two okay?" "Of course," I said, smiling for the camera as someone snapped another photo. "He's just tired." I danced again, louder this time, forcing energy back into the room. But whenever I looked for him, I saw only the empty chair where he should have been. Later that night, when everyone left, we drove to the hotel in silence. I tried to joke that we'd be legends online, but he didn't answer. He stared out the window like he was already gone. In the suite, he placed his jacket neatly on the chair and sat down on the couch. I asked if he wanted champagne. He said no. I said, "Are you really going to let one joke ruin our night?" He said, "It wasn't a joke. It was a message." I asked what he meant. "You wanted to prove something," he said. "That you could humiliate me and still win people over." I shook my head. "That's ridiculous." He looked up. "Then why did you laugh when no one else did?" I had no answer. He stood, walked to the bedroom, and said quietly, "Sleep. We'll deal with this later." I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Every sound, the hum of the mini-fridge, the wind against the window, felt like a reminder of what I'd done. The next morning, he was gone. His side of the bed was untouched. On the desk was a small note. "Went for a walk. Checkout is at 11. When he came back, I tried to start over. "Let's just move on," I said. "It's behind us." He looked at me calmly. "It's not behind us, it's recorded." That's when I realized someone had posted the full video of the ceremony. It was everywhere. Bride claims she's already married. Comments filled with laughing emojis, hashtags, and sympathy for Owen. I tried to laugh it off again, but this time the sound caught in my throat. He didn't shout, didn't accuse. He simply said, "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." I said, "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer. He just opened his phone and started typing something I couldn't see. When we got home that afternoon, he went straight to his office. I heard the quiet hum of his printer again. Then nothing. That night, he didn't join me in bed. I walked to his office door and knocked. "Can we talk?" I asked. He said, "Later." I said, "Promise?" He said, "Properly." Printer hum resumes, then stops with a sharp beep, followed by the faint rustle of papers sliding into a folder labeled Household. The week after the wedding felt like walking through fog. Owen and I lived in the same apartment but barely spoke. He got up early, left quietly, came home late. I told myself he just needed time to cool off. But the way he looked through me made it feel like I was a stranger renting space in his life. Bree kept calling, saying the online attention was crazy. I told her to stop mentioning it. She said, "You should see the comments. People are calling you fearless." I said, "They're calling me careless." She laughed. Same thing. But it wasn't funny anymore. One night I cooked dinner, thinking maybe we could start fresh. Owen came home, loosened his tie, and said thank you. We sat down in silence. I tried to make a joke about how quiet it was. He said, "It's peaceful." I pushed my plate away. "So that's it? You just shut down?" He said, "It's easier than pretending." I told him he was overreacting, that people moved on from worse things. He nodded. They move on when there's something worth saving. That sentence stuck like a splinter. I asked if he was saying we weren't worth saving. He didn't answer. After dinner, he went to his office. I followed him, leaning on the doorframe. "You're not the only one who's embarrassed," I said. "Everyone's judging me too." He said without turning around, "You chose the stage." I hated how calm he sounded. "I made a mistake, not a crime." He finally looked at me. Sometimes the only difference is the audience. I stormed off before he could say more. The next morning, his phone buzzed while he was in the shower. I didn't mean to look, but I did. The screen showed a calendar reminder. Downtown 10:15. No details, no app notification, just that. My stomach twisted. I set the phone down before he came out. He walked into the kitchen, towel around his neck, acting normal. I asked where he was going later. He said, "Just errands." "What kind of errands?" He smiled faintly. "The kind that need quiet." That day, I met Bree for lunch. She said, "You look awful." I told her things were tense. She shrugged. "He'll come around. Guys like him always do." I said, "He's different now." She said, "Then give him a reason to remember why he liked you." I didn't know what she meant, but I nodded anyway. That night, Owen came home earlier than usual. He looked calm, too calm. He asked how my day was. I said fine. He said, "Good." Then he opened his laptop and started typing. I asked what he was working on. "Just organizing things," he said. "Like what?" He said, "Records. I want everything to be clear." The word clear sounded wrong, heavy. I laughed nervously. "You talk like we're running a company." He didn't look up. "We built one, in a way. We just never read the fine print." I asked what that meant, but he didn't explain. He just kept typing. That weekend, his mother Darla invited us to brunch. She said she wanted to check in. I didn't want to go, but Owen said it was better to face people than hide. The restaurant was bright and crowded, full of the polite noise that makes you feel watched. Darla greeted us with a soft hug. Jules was there too, scrolling through her phone. We sat down, and almost immediately, Darla said, "You two have been quiet online." I forced a laugh. "Trying to let things die down." She said, "Some things don't die. They get recorded." Owen stirred his coffee. Jules spoke without looking up. "My co-worker showed me your video, Maren. Said you were brave." I said, "It was just a joke." Owen said quietly, "That's the line that keeps haunting me." Darla put down her fork. Owen's right. Words mean something, especially public ones. I snapped, "So you think I'm evil now?" She said calmly, "I think you like attention more than peace." The table went silent. Jules looked away. Owen just kept his hands folded. I couldn't breathe. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I'm not doing this," Owen said softly. "You don't have to. You already did." I walked out. The cool air outside hit me like a slap. A few minutes later, Owen came out too. He didn't look angry, just tired. "You humiliated me in front of your family," I said. He said, "You humiliated yourself." I told him I couldn't live like this, like every day was a punishment. He said, "It's not punishment. It's the truth catching up." We drove home in silence. When we got inside, he went straight to his office again. I followed him to the doorway. "What are you doing now?" he said. "Fixing things." "How?" He looked up, expression unreadable. "Properly." I opened my mouth to argue, but he had already turned back to his desk. Later that night, I checked his office. The door was open. The folders I'd seen before, household, accounts, personal, were stacked neatly. The laptop screen glowed with a spreadsheet. Next to it was a printed list of dates. I felt a chill run through me. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was documenting. I stood there, staring at the papers until I heard footsteps behind me. He said, "Looking for something?" I spun around. "I just wanted to understand what you're doing." He said, "That's new." I tried to smile. "You're scaring me." He said, "Then maybe stop laughing at the things that hurt." He took the folders and placed them in a drawer, locking it with a quiet click. Then he looked at me and said, "Tomorrow I'll take care of it. Properly." Door latch clicked shut. Then the faint buzz of his phone. Calendar reminder lights up again. Downtown 10:15. The next morning, the apartment felt too quiet, as if the walls were waiting for something to happen. Owen was already dressed when I woke up. He wore his grey suit, the one he usually saved for meetings, and he was standing by the window, looking out at the street. I asked if he was going to work. He said, "For a bit." His voice was calm, almost gentle, but I could tell it wasn't the kind of calm that meant peace. It was the kind that meant decision. I tried to sound light. "Still keeping secrets?" He looked at me over his shoulder. "No secrets, Maren, just facts." I laughed awkwardly. "You've been saying things like that for days. You sound like you're rehearsing a statement." He didn't respond. He picked up his bag and said, "We'll talk tonight." When the door closed behind him, I sank into a chair and stared at the clock. Every sound felt loud. The tick of the second hand, the refrigerator hum, the faint car horns outside. I checked my phone, half hoping Bree would text me with some distraction, but nothing came. By noon, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I called Jules, hoping for reassurance, but she answered coldly. "Owen told me not to get involved." "Not to get involved in what?" She paused. "Whatever comes next." Then she hung up. I felt dizzy. I told myself it couldn't be serious. He wasn't that kind of man. He didn't act out of anger. He acted out of structure. Still, the thought of what he might be building behind that calm scared me. That afternoon, I went through his office again. The desk was spotless. The folders were gone. Only his laptop remained, shut and locked. On the corkboard above it, he'd pinned a short list written in his neat handwriting. Accounts, assets, records, closure. The word closure made my skin crawl. I called Bree. She sounded distant, maybe nervous. "You're not going to like this," she said, "but Owen called me yesterday." "What? Why?" "He asked for the photos from the wedding, said he wanted everything for personal documentation." I laughed bitterly. "He's building a scrapbook now." "Maren," she said quietly, "I think he's serious." I hung up before she could say more. When Owen came home that evening, he carried a takeout bag. He set it down on the table and said, "You should eat." I asked, Is this your way of making peace? He looked at me steadily. This is my way of making sense. I sat across from him, trying to read his expression. You've been collecting things, writing things down, talking to people. What are you doing, Owen? He folded his napkin carefully before answering. Protecting myself. From me? He nodded once. From what you've turned me into. I laughed, but my voice shook. That's dramatic. No, he said softly. It's accurate. I slammed my fork down. You're acting like I ruined your life over a joke. He met my eyes. You didn't ruin it. You recorded it. He stood up and cleared the table, his movements precise, almost formal. When he turned back, he said, I told you I'd handle this properly. I will. I asked again what that meant. He said, it means I'm done explaining myself to people who think humiliation is humor. I followed him as he walked toward his office. So what, you're leaving? You think you're some kind of hero? He stopped at the door and turned around. No, just someone who finally stopped laughing. He closed the door behind him. I paced the living room for an hour, listening to the muffled sound of his voice. He was on the phone again, tone calm and measured. I heard phrases like, next step and final draft. The words made me feel sick. When he finally came out, I asked, Are you meeting someone? He nodded. Tomorrow, downtown, I said, at 10:15. He didn't even look surprised. You've been checking my reminders. I said, I'm your wife. He said, you're the reason for the reminders. I couldn't stop myself. You're punishing me because people laughed. He took a slow breath. No, Maren. I'm leaving because you never stopped performing. He picked up his coat and walked to the door. I asked where he was going. To sleep somewhere peaceful. I said, You'll come back, right? He paused, hand on the doorknob. I'll come back when things are official. Then the door closed. I stood there for a long time, the sound of that final click echoing through the apartment. Later, I found the takeout containers still untouched. On the counter, next to his empty coffee mug, was a single note in his handwriting. Tomorrow settles everything. Please be ready to listen. I read it twice, my pulse thudding. That night I didn't sleep. I walked through every room, replaying everything I'd ever said to him, every joke that wasn't funny anymore. Around 3 a.m., I opened my phone. The video of our wedding was still circulating. Millions of views now, comments divided between mockery and pity. Under one post, someone had written, He looks like he's already gone. I stared at that sentence until my screen dimmed. When the first light of morning came through the curtains, I made coffee and sat at the table, waiting for the sound of his key. It never came. The car engine starts outside, followed by the quiet vibration of her phone. New message from Owen. Meet me at the plaza at noon. The plaza was crowded when I arrived, noisy with traffic, pigeons, people moving in every direction. I spotted Owen right away. He was standing near the fountain, the same grey suit, the same calm expression that had started to terrify me. He wasn't alone. A woman in a navy coat stood beside him, holding a small folder. I called his name, trying to sound casual, like this was just another one of our arguments that would end in a sigh and a quiet dinner. He turned slowly, the city noise fading in my ears. You got my message, he said. I nodded. What's going on? He looked at the woman. She stepped forward. Mrs. Vale? She asked. I blinked. Yes. She handed me an envelope. You've been served. The world tilted. What? Owen didn't move, didn't flinch. It's time to make things clear, he said. I tore open the envelope. Inside were official-looking papers. The first line hit me like a punch. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Temporary financial orders pending. This is a joke, I said, my voice too loud. It's another one of your lessons, right? You're making a point. He shook his head. No, I'm ending the performance. I laughed, though it sounded more like a gasp. In public, here. You couldn't talk to me at home, he said. At home, everything becomes an act. Here, there's a record. A few people nearby had stopped to watch. I felt their eyes like heat on my skin. The woman stepped back, giving us space. I tried to hand the papers back. "No, you can't just... This isn't how it works," Owen said. "It's exactly how it works. Properly. Legally." The word legally made me sick. I took a step closer, whispering, "You're doing this to humiliate me." He looked at me, calm and steady. "You did that to both of us. I'm just finishing it without cruelty." I said, "You think this makes you noble?" He said, "No, it makes me free." A camera flash went off somewhere to the side. I turned my head, startled. Someone had recognized us, maybe from the viral video. I heard a faint voice say, "That's her." Owen didn't even look toward the noise. "You always said you wanted people to remember us," he said. "Now they will." "Don't do this," I whispered. "Please, not like this." He said softly, "There isn't another way left." I looked down at the papers again, the words swimming: financial separation, temporary possession orders, references to public reputational harm. I could barely understand half of it, but I knew what it meant. He wasn't just leaving. He was erasing me properly, line by line. My throat burned. "You really went this far?" He said. "You went first." I wanted to scream, to throw the envelope at him, to make him feel something. But he just stood there, his calmer wall I couldn't climb. I said, "What about vows? You said marriage was about steadiness." He nodded once. "And you said marriage was about laughter. We were both wrong." The woman in the navy coat stepped forward again. "Mrs. Vale, I need you to sign here acknowledging receipt." I stared at the blank line. "If I don't," Owen said, "then they'll just file it without your signature." I signed. My hand shook, the pen slipping slightly. When I handed the paper back, the woman thanked me politely and walked away. I looked up at him. "You planned this for weeks, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. "I planned it the night you joked about being someone else's wife." I felt something in my chest crack. "I thought you'd forgive me eventually." He said, "I tried. But forgiveness doesn't erase humiliation. It just hides it until you laugh again." I wanted to say I was sorry, but the word felt too small, too late. Instead, I said, "You could have just told me." He said, "I did. Every day, in silence." Then he turned to leave. Darla and Jules were standing a few steps away, watching quietly. I hadn't noticed them arrive. Darla gave me a look that wasn't cruel, just resigned, like she'd seen this ending long before I had. Owen walked toward them, shoulders straight, the afternoon light catching on his suit. He paused once, looking back, not with anger, but with finality. "Goodbye, Maren," he said. He didn't wait for me to answer. I stood there, the sound of water from the fountain masking the noise of the city. A few people kept watching, others pretending not to. My hands were trembling so hard the papers almost slipped. I wanted to chase after him, to make one last joke to break the silence, to pull him back the way I always used to. But nothing came out. Another camera flash went off, then another. The sound of it echoed like applause I didn't deserve. I looked down at the papers again. At the bottom, a single line stood out: "Petitioner requests dissolution due to public defamation and breach of trust." I folded the envelope against my chest, pressing it hard enough to hurt. He had handled it properly, just like he promised. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.